Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Mrs. Anderson and today I'm going to walk through how you can complete the square. First, I want to go over with you guys what is a perfect square trinomial because this kind of makes up the whole idea behind completing the square. So let's take a look at an example. If I have x squared plus 6x plus 9, I'm going to show you guys how you can rewrite this so that it's in a perfect square trinomial form. So what makes something a perfect square trinomial? Well, first let's remember what a, b, and c are on all of these examples. Now we're dealing with a quadratic form here because we have x squared, so that makes it quadratic. And in a quadratic form, we have a, b, and c, which represent numbers in our equation. When I'm looking at x squared plus 6x plus 9, there are three main points. There's the x squared, the 6x, and the plus 9. Technically, there's a 1 sitting in front of that x squared. There's a 6 in front of the x, and there's a 9 at the very end. So, our a would be the 1, our b would be the 6, and our c would be the 9. In order to test for a perfect square trinomial, you need to take your b term and divide it by 2. Then you're going to square that result, and this should equal your c term. If all of those things happen, that means that you are working with a perfect square trinomial. If it doesn't come out to equal that c term after you square the middle term cut in half, then it's not a perfect square trinomial. So, to write it as a perfect square trinomial, using the example up above, I would take 1/2 of my 6, square that, and I should get 9. Because 1/2 of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9. So it does match up that it is a perfect square trinomial. So if I wanted to rewrite it, it would be x plus 3 squared. Note that the 3 is what I found when I took my b term, my 6 in this equation, divided by 2. Let's practice. I want us to fill in the blank here to make this a perfect square trinomial. So I have x squared plus 10x plus my blank. So let's take 10 divided by 2. That's going to equal 5. Now we're going to square the 5, which would be 25. So the answer would be x squared plus 10x plus 25, and if we rewrote it in perfect square trinomial form, it would be x plus 5 squared. Now if we look at this one, we have x squared minus 4x plus a blank. Don't let that minus sign make you think that this is going to be any different than the one that we just did. We're still going to take that negative 4, our b term, divided by 2. Now this time when we divide that, we get a negative 2. Now we're going to square negative 2. That equals positive 4. Remember, a negative times a negative is always going to equal a positive. So the answer is going to still be x squared minus 4x plus 4. The only difference when I rewrite this one as a perfect square trinomial is that now you guys should see that it says x minus 2 squared, because when I took negative 4 divided by 2, I got negative 2. So how does this connect to completing the square? Completing the square is the process of using a perfect square trinomial and the square root property in order to solve an equation. We're going to be using the same process that I just showed you in order to get our problem set up as perfect square trinomials, and then use our square root property in order to solve the problem. Let's do a quick reminder here about what exactly is a square root in case you're not familiar with what a square root property is talking about. The square root is the opposite of squaring something. For example, if I take 6 squared, I get 36. So the square root of 36 would be 6. Also, quick side note that all square roots have positive and a negative root. And why is this? Well, if I take 6 squared, I get 36. But if I also take negative 6 squared, I also get 36. So technically, the square root of 36 would be both positive and negative 6. This will come in when we start to solve these equations. Let's practice completing the square. So I have x squared plus 6x minus 16. First, if you need to, I would add equals 0 at the end of your problem. So I rewrote it so it says x squared plus 6x minus 16 equals 0. Second, let's move that negative 16 by adding it to both sides of the equation. So I'm showing you here how I'm going to add 16 to the left side and to the right side of the equation in order to keep it balanced. Now I'm going to rewrite and include blanks that we will use to complete the square. So it now says x squared plus 6x plus my blank equals 16 plus another blank. And those blanks come in this next step when we write it as a perfect square trinomial. So complete the square like we just did. We're going to take half of our 6, because that's our b term, which would be 3, and 3 squared is going to be 9. So I rewrite it with those 9's in place of those blanks. So x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 16 plus 9. Now we'll simplify this a little bit. So we can rewrite this as a perfect square trinomial. So on the left side, I'm going to rewrite it so it says x plus 3, quantity squared. And on the right side, it says 25. Now what we're going to do is square root each side of the equation because I want to get rid of that squared on the left side. So in order to undo something that's squared, we square root it. So I put a square root on each side. And on the left side, the square root and the square are going to basically undo each other. And then when I square root the 25, I'm going to get a positive and a negative answer. So it says x plus 3 equals plus or minus 5. Now because we have a positive and a negative root, I'm going to have to solve the equation twice. So I set up my two equations. X plus 3 equals a positive 5 and x plus 3 equals a negative 5. For both equations, I'm going to subtract 3 over, and 5 minus 3 is going to give me an answer of 2. Negative 5 minus 3 is going to give me an answer of negative 8. So let's take a look at another example. We have x squared plus 8x minus 20. I set it equal to 0. I add 20 to both sides. Rewrite my equation with my blanks. So x squared plus 8x plus blank equals 20 plus the blank. Now I'm going to take half of my b term, my half of my 8, which is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So 16 goes in place of the blanks. On the left side now, if I rewrite it in my perfect square trinomial form, it would say x plus 4 squared. And on the right side, 20 plus 16 would simplify to 36. Now I square root both sides of the equation. And after doing that, I'm left with x plus 4 equals plus or minus 6. So my two equations are going to say x plus 4 equals positive 6 and x plus 4 equals negative 6. I subtract 4 on both sides of each equation, and I get 2 and a negative 10 for my answers. If you're ready to give it a try, I've created a practice quiz on a website called quiziz.com, and it is a multiple choice platform where you can go and try these problems on your own and kind of practice what we just went over. That link is posted in the description below, but you can also copy and paste this link too, or type it out in your URL if you want to. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you are able to go and apply this skill on your own. Thanks for watching.